Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for what promises to be a deeply thought-provoking exploration into the nature of prophetic claims, historical verification, and the logical frameworks we use to determine the truth. Have you ever wondered how we can objectively distinguish between a genuine historical truth and a carefully constructed illusion? When someone steps forward making the ultimate claim that they speak directly for the divine, how do we test the validity of their incredibly consequential words? Throughout history, countless individuals have claimed to possess a direct line to the Creator, but accepting such monumental claims without rigorous scrutiny is a disservice to both faith and intellect. Today, we are going to embark on a fascinating, meticulously detailed journey through history, logic, and theology. We will unpack a specific, undeniable pattern of evidence that challenges one of the most widely accepted prophetic narratives in human history. Settle in, keep an open mind, and let us dive profoundly into the intricacies of what it truly means to verify a prophet. To truly grasp the magnitude of the argument we are exploring today, it is highly effective to begin with a historical parallel that clearly illustrates the logical mechanics at play. Let us travel back to the year 1830 and carefully examine the case of Joseph Smith, the controversial founder of the Mormon Church. For the sake of this intellectual exercise, imagine a vivid hypothetical dialogue taking place between Joseph Smith and the deeply skeptical Christians of his era. The townspeople, naturally doubtful of his sudden rise and his extraordinary assertions, might reasonably ask him to provide tangible, undeniable proof that he is indeed a true prophet chosen by God. In response to this perfectly rational demand, Smith would confidently assert that his arrival was not a surprise to the divine plan, but was rather explicitly prophesied by his exact name within the ancient pages of the Bible. Naturally, the next logical step for the crowd would be to ask exactly where this world-altering prophecy could be found so they might read it for themselves. Smith would direct them to the book of Genesis, specifically instructing them to turn to chapter 50, verse 33. However, upon opening their texts, the audience would encounter a glaring, undeniable problem. Genesis chapter 50 abruptly and definitively concludes at verse 26. There is absolutely no verse 33 to be found anywhere in the manuscript. When confronted with this massive, glaring discrepancy, Smith's hypothetical defense becomes intensely problematic and intellectually indefensible. He would boldly claim that the original, authentic ending of Genesis, which coincidentally contained his specific validating prophecy, was tragically lost to the ravages of history. But, he would quickly add, there's no need to worry, because God has conveniently chosen to re-reveal these exact lost verses. And who, you might ask, has God chosen as the exclusive vessel to receive these newly restored, incredibly convenient verses? The answer, rather unbelievably, is Joseph Smith himself. At this precise juncture, the narrative forcefully transitions from a serious theological claim into something that resembles a comical farce. It is a hopelessly, inescapably circular argument that defies all bounds of basic logic. To believe in the absolute legitimacy of Joseph Smith, one must first firmly believe in the historical validity of the prophecy allegedly found in Genesis 50:33. Yet, in a dizzying loop of circular reasoning in order to believe in the very existence of Genesis 50:33, one must fundamentally, unquestioningly trust the word of Joseph Smith. This logical fallacy represents far more than just a weak debate tactic or a simple misunderstanding. It serves as a definitive, undeniable proof of intellectual fraud. Accepting this bizarre sequence of events requires us to adopt an incredibly diminished, insulting, and frankly illogical view of the divine. Let us carefully trace the supposed sequence of actions attributed to the Creator in this scenario. First, we must believe that an all-powerful, all-knowing God successfully sent down a crucial, foundational prophecy foretelling the arrival of a critically important future prophet. Second, we are asked to accept that this same omniscient God inexplicably allowed every single trace of this vital prophecy to vanish entirely from the face of the earth. Generations forgot the words, sacred texts were somehow lost or corrupted without divine intervention, and the message completely evaporated, a scenario that paints a picture of a rather absent-minded deity. Third, upon supposedly realizing that his grand foundational prophecy had been carelessly forgotten by humanity, God decides to send the prophecy down once more. But instead of providing it to an independent, neutral party for objective verification, he makes the most perplexing, self-defeating choice imaginable. He sends the prophecy directly to the exact same person the prophecy is meant to validate. This supposed sequence of divine actions suggests a level of ineptitude that completely contradicts the fundamental nature of an all-knowing Creator. In reality, stripped of its religious veneer, it is painfully obvious what is actually happening here. An individual is attempting to retroactively and artificially write themselves into the fabric of sacred history. From a purely logical standpoint, it is exactly equivalent to writing your own glowing job reference and sealing it in an envelope, or publishing a radiant 5-star review for your own business while pretending to be a completely independent, satisfied customer. It is about as convincing as an individual walking into a crowded room wearing a handwritten name badge that reads, "Hello, I am foretold by ancient destiny. Just ask me." We can accurately and academically define this deeply flawed, entirely self-serving approach as the self-certifying strategy. The core premise of this concept is brilliantly simple and devastatingly effective. No genuine, authentic prophet genuinely sent by a supreme being would ever need to rely on the self-certifying strategy. If a person is truly, undeniably sent by the divine, God would simply not establish a system so utterly devoid of logical verification and independent corroboration. If God intended to foretell a prophet's arrival to prepare the world, he would ensure through his divine power that the prophecy was impeccably preserved, so that when the prophet finally arrives on the world stage, the people can independently verify the ancient claim. The entire fundamental purpose of a prophecy is to authenticate the messenger to the masses. If it cannot be independently checked by a skeptical audience, it completely and utterly fails to serve its foundational purpose. Alternatively, if God, in his infinite wisdom, chose not to foretell a particular prophet's coming, he would naturally utilize other undeniable, robust methods methods to authenticate his messenger. He might grant them the awe-inspiring power to perform undeniable miracles, or bestow upon them the ability to make perfectly accurate, highly specific prophecies about future events that eventually come to pass. Even if we were to humor the highly unlikely scenario where God actively allowed a crucial identity-verifying prophecy to be entirely lost to future generations, it would be profoundly, positively idiotic for him to attempt a sloppy salvage operation by having the new prophet simply re-reveal their own ancient foretelling. Any individual who willfully resorts to attempting the self-certifying strategy is demonstrating a clear, unambiguous hallmark of fraud. It is an elementary test of logical consistency, and it is highly revealing that no established, widely recognized prophet within the biblical tradition has ever relied upon this deeply flawed strategy.
Having thoroughly established the fatal logical flaws and theological absurdities inherent in the self-certifying strategy, we now arrive at the central, critical focus of our historical exploration. The undeniable, documented historical fact is that Muhammad attempted this exact same, deeply flawed self-certifying strategy. He made the extraordinary, sweeping claim that his arrival as a prophet was explicitly foretold by his specific name by a highly revered prophet who walked the earth centuries before him. However, following the exact same pattern as our hypothetical Joseph Smith scenario, this grand validating prophecy was allegedly lost entirely from all human memory and all existing historical records. And then, completing the predictable cycle of the self-certifying strategy, God allegedly sent this desperately needed lost prophecy down once again, specifically and exclusively through Muhammad himself. This critical, monumental claim is explicitly recorded within the foundational Islamic texts, specifically within Surah 61, verse 6. This specific verse boldly asserts that Jesus, the son of Mary, addressed the children of Israel during his time, confirming the ancient laws that came before him and deliberately delivering the glad tidings of a future messenger whose name would be Ahmad. In the linguistic and historical context of the Arabic language, Ahmad and Muhammad are essentially equivalent names, derived from the exact same linguistic root. In this single specific verse, we witness the absolute completion of the self-certifying strategy in real time. Surah 61 verse 6 definitively claims that Muhammad's monumental arrival was foretold by Jesus Christ by name. Yet, when we subject this claim to historical scrutiny, we find that this supposed prophecy does not exist anywhere within the vast, incredibly detailed historical records documenting the words, life, or teachings of Jesus. It was never written down, never preserved by early followers, and never referenced by a single human being in the massive, deeply documented 6th-century gap that separates the earthly life of Jesus from the emergence of Muhammad.
We have covered some incredibly deep, challenging, and profoundly important philosophical ground today, meticulously dissecting the intricate layers of historical claims and logical deduction. I genuinely hope this detailed, deeply analytical narrative has provided you with a fresh, highly rigorous perspective on how we can systematically analyze and logically verify the most profound claims in human history. Navigating these complex historical and theological waters requires patience, critical thinking, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. If you found this deep dive stimulating, intellectually rewarding, and valuable to your understanding of history and religion, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like on this video. Your active engagement is absolutely crucial. It helps us continue producing in-depth, thoroughly researched analytical content just like this. I would also absolutely love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or any lingering questions you might have down in the comments section below. Let's keep this fascinating, respectful, and highly intellectual conversation going. Thank you so much for investing your time and watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.